In the last episode, we talked about the surface level trust leaks that most people focus on, their SEO, their website, their email opt-in autoresponders, those types of things. Today, we're going to go deeper because most trust doesn't leak or doesn't break on the surface. It's actually after the experience starts. So once someone becomes a client, whether that's investing $1 or $100,000 with you, what happens next? Okay, first, let me just explain that if you've ever lost a client and you're not sure why, this is probably one of the reasons, one of these trust leaks. These inside the business, they've become a client. Leaks are often unintentional, very quiet, and also very expensive. You see, clients don't leave because of one big failure typically. That happens, of course. They often leave because of small experience gaps that compound, and they do that quietly. So, first, let's clarify what we mean by experience. It's not the branding, it's not the personality, it's not the vibes. Typically, what it is what happens after someone says yes. How does it feel to move through your business, through the process? What is their onboarding like? What are those in between moments that we don't talk about, we don't market? That is what crafts the overall experience for your customer and client. There's an important thing to remember. As business owners, we're focusing on the delivery. We promised X, we need to deliver X. We need to fulfill on that. Clients, however, experience transitions. Transition between being a prospect to a paying client to whatever it is that they're looking for. What's their outcome that they're seeking? So they're experiencing all these different transitions while we're just saying, okay, here's the list, check off the list, let's get those things done. What happens in between the list? All right, so let's talk about that. There are four primary hidden experience gaps, and we're going to talk about them in order. The first one is now what? What is the now what gap? Simple. I've given you my credit card, you've charged me, hopefully, I've gotten a wonderful welcome email, and then crickets. What happens next? Here's a great way to be able to consider that. The last time you signed up for something, what happened and how did you feel about it? Did you feel like, oh, this person really values me, is happy that I'm here? Is this more of just a transaction to the person or the company, or do I feel valued? Okay, so that's one thing, the now what gap. If you don't answer that, either through email, text message, a quick phone call, a video message, they're wondering. And one of the things I always like to say is that surprises are good, but not in this sense. They don't want to be surprised. They don't want to wonder. They want to know what's the steps. All right, let's move on to gap number two, the energy drop gap. Now, this is when you're having a discovery call, you're having a conversation, you're up, you're excited, you're happy, and then Jane goes ahead and signs up for your ex. She hires you for your service, your advisory, whatever it happens to be, and all of a sudden your energy is different. Now, different doesn't mean bad, it just means different. However, in Jane's subconscious, in her subconscious mind, different means, something's going on. I don't quite understand what's going on. Susie was this way when we were having the conversation about working together, and now she's this way. So maybe higher energy, and now all of a sudden very calm, very different. This leaks trust for a simple reason. Clients unconsciously track momentum, they track consistency. A drop in energy or a sharp increase in energy. It can go either way. It can feel like regret, not relief, because now they don't know that they bought what they thought they were buying. So it creates this little gap in their head that says, is this exactly what I want? I'm not sure. It's not about hypey sales. It's not about really fulfilling on the back end. It's about care. It's about steadiness. It's about consistency in your energy, in your words, your language, in your presence with them. So you want to be consistent. You want to be you. The easiest person to be is you. It's not like sales Susie puts on a cape and she's this way to sell the project. And then once the project is won, she takes off the cape and she's all just heads down, focused, deep work, not speaking, not clarifying, not staying in touch. So you want to be aware of your energy. Gap number three, the assumption gap. And this is a big, big one because oftentimes founders, business owners assume that clients know what they're talking about. They assume a certain level of clarity or that a base foundation of knowledge that may or may not be there. Oftentimes, as founders, we also make the assumption that, hey, I said that to Jane once, so obviously she's got it. When Jane is like, whoa, what? What just happened? There's this thing called unconscious competence, where we learn to walk. Once you learn to walk, you don't think about walking. You just walk, you just do it. And when you're an expert in your field, in your industry, you don't think about a lot of the basics, about a lot of things because you're an expert. They're natural, they're second nature to you. That is unconscious competence. And what it results in is us assuming oftentimes that everybody knows what we know, at least to a certain level. Now, what happens is this familiarity blinds business owners because we're making assumptions that we don't know are true or not true. Clients are always newer than you think. They're typically at least a few steps behind you. So you want to be very careful about assuming that they know something. What's obvious to you is often invisible to them. And if it's not invisible, then there's this like hazy fog that exists between where you are and where they are. And they're just trying to see their way through the fog. And your role, assuming you're in advisory, strategy, architecture, assuming you're in any of those, you want to make sure that the path, the guidance you're giving is crystal clear. And it doesn't mean that you personally, as the founder, need to be on all the time. It means that you have to have the systems to back you up. You have to have the processes. You have to have what I call personalized automation that takes care of a lot of those foundational items so you don't always need to be on. But the assumption gap can cost a lot of clients just because we make that basic assumption. Years ago, my assistant used to work in my office with me. Now we're all remote. But back then, I was pounding out a quick article and I asked her to give it a quick proofread for me. And she's like, "What is this? What is this? And I'm like, "How do you not know this?" And she said, "I don't know everything you know." I said, "You've been sitting next to me for 3 years. How do you not know?" And she said, "Do you know how much you know that you just take for granted everybody else knows?" And that for me was when the little switch flipped. And I went, "Oh, yes." And all of a sudden, I had to ratchet down to make sure that the person or people I was speaking with understood every single thing I was saying. It didn't work if I put in a word had in part of the conversation that they didn't understand what the word, and I just kept merrily traipsing away. And that was a foundational thought. So you want to be very aware of what you're saying. You want to be very aware of where your clients are so that you can meet them there. All right, let's go on to gap number four, the inconsistency gap. It's simple, different answers on different days. Support depends on who they're talking to, and their experience changes based on your energy. You show up today, you're Dr. Jekyll. All is great and wonderful in the world. They have a call with you 2 days later. It's been a bad day, and you're Mr. Hyde, short, curt answers. That's not what they're looking for. Clients expect predictability, not perfection. Consistency in how we work, how we show up, and consistency in what we provide to them. Now that we've covered the four trust gaps, why do these gaps go unnoticed? Simply, clients rarely complain about experience gaps, not unless it's really, really just obvious and bad. They just disengage. And that's kind of the worst type of client to have, one who just disengages because they very soon will not be a client. They've turned something off in their head, so they're not getting the value they could be getting from all the wonderful things that you do. And the reason is simple. Most clients are conflict avoidant. That's just the way a lot of us are made. They internalize friction not as something happening with the business, not as something happening with you, but as maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe the approach is wrong. And by the time you notice this, the damage is done and they've churned. And chances are you'll see more churn and you're going, what's going on? What's going on is there's some gaps in the experience. These gaps in absolutely no way mean that you're bad or not great at what you do. They do mean that your business is relying too heavily on you to compensate 100% of the time. Something that's really important for you to understand here, experience is a design problem. It's not a people problem. See, trust doesn't scale through effort, it scales through design. What do I mean by that? You don't fix gaps by trying harder. You fix them by defining transitions, setting expectations, removing guesswork. Don't assume, like the assumption gap on number 3 that we covered. You just go through these 4 gaps: the now what gap, the energy drop, the assumption gap, and inconsistency gap. Say, okay, where is my business inadvertently doing these, and how can I plug these leaks? You see, when experience is designed well, clients feel supported without you having to constantly prove yourself. And yet, when it's not, you're carrying this weight of building and holding trust manually in every active interaction. And it's the passive ones that tend to lose things, that tend to increase churn. Next time, we're going to zoom in one specific client experience gap that causes more problems than almost any other: clarity. Because confusion is one of the fastest ways that trust erodes. It's one of the fastest ways that people churn, even when your intentions are good. Thanks so much for joining me on today's episode of The Trust Leaks. If you found value in what we covered, please follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. We love ratings. Please go ahead and give us a rating on your platform of choice. And if you'd like to dig deeper, head over to themartiniway.com. Until next time, remember, every detail matters, even those that you don't see, when it comes to building trust. Thanks for tuning in to Trust Leaks.